Hello and welcome to our Fall TELTalk featuring Dr. Imran Andrabi, President and CEO of ThedaCare, sponsored by United Way, Fox Cities Emerging Leaders. My name is Via Lauren Jones, and I am the chair of the Emerging Leaders Events Committee. I cannot begin to tell you how excited I am to welcome you all here. For those joining us today to hear from Dr. Andrabi, thanks to his leadership, I live inspired every day in the work that I do through ThedaCare. And we are so thrilled to offer this TELTalk and want to take a real quick moment to thank our sponsors for making this happen. Our platinum sponsors are Kimberly Clark, Alta Resources, Amcor, Integrity Insurance, and Miller. Our gold sponsors, Godfrey Kahn and Menasha Corporation. Our silver sponsors, Community First, Legacy Private Trust, Myron, Secura, US Bank, and our bronze sponsors, Bergstrom, Best Western Premier, and McClone Insurance. So just a few housekeeping things before we get excited today. You can get excited, but before we get started, we're going to keep everyone muted today. So don't worry about that. We got you on mute. Thank you for those who submitted questions during your registration. If you missed that chance and do have some questions, that question and answer box is there for you. It is the only way for you to ask questions. So make sure you go to that question and answer box. And we're going to answer as many questions as we have time for. So you may see that little QR code there. I'm going to encourage you to do what you can to click that code. You're going to find out more information on emerging leaders, our upcoming events, and some opportunities for some giveaways. So stay tuned for that. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Brenton Teeling. He is our Emerging Leaders Committee Chair, and he's going to give a brief overview of the United Way Emerging Leaders. Brenton?
Thank you, Via. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. As Via mentioned, my name is Brenton Teeling, and I'm privileged to serve as the current chair of United Way Fox Cities Emerging Leaders. Emerging Leaders, being part of our group, is a way for young leaders to invest in impactful and lasting change in our Fox Cities communities. The group supports the community by giving $500 or more each year to the United Way Fox Cities and is recommended for young leaders age 40 and under. And as you can see on your screen there today, since 2008, we have grown from just a handful of emerging leaders to now nearly 1,000 members strong this year. So something we're very proud of our growth. So if you'd like to learn more, please visit our social media pages, the United Way website, or reach out today during our TELTalk, as mentioned in the chat box. As emerging leaders, we do many things to connect to our community and to like-minded young leaders, like events today, like our TELTalk, that gets you closer to our local leaders and CEOs right here in the Fox Cities. Most recently, we've been able to hear from leaders such as Becky Tooksher of Miller Electric and Kim Underhill of Kimberly Clark. We've also had some special guests here recently, most recently, John Quinones, ABC News and host of the show, What Would You Do? We also, a couple of years ago, hosted a special guest, Aaron Rodgers, who joined as a guest of Mr. John Bergstrom. We also participate in personal and professional development through events like Real Colors workshops and professional panels featuring many of our very own emerging leaders. We also host volunteer opportunities, such as our signature event, the Valentine's Family Festival, every February. Also host volunteer opportunities at Pillars and Youth Go. And lastly, we are excited when able to host networking opportunities for many of our young leaders to join together and network at social events. This year, United Way is also very, very excited to introduce our newest donor network link, that is Lead, Impact, Network, Change. And this donor network is for young leaders passionate about building a stronger community and passionate about giving of their time talent, and generous donations. Link is for young leaders ages 30 and under who give $5 per week or $250 per year. So if you'd like to learn more about Link, we would invite you to reach out to any of us or scan the QR code that you currently see on your screen. We would also, as we enter into United Way campaign season, invite you to get your companies and your businesses to talk about emerging leaders and Link. In addition to launching Link here this campaign season, we have other events that are coming up here very soon. So if today is your first look at emerging leaders, we would invite you to join us next Thursday, October 7th, as two of our own emerging leaders, Brooke Jantz and Connor Stilp, will host an Emerging Leaders 101 through a virtual event. That is a way to take a deeper look at the impact that we have as emerging leaders in our community. Second, our friends at Oshkosh Area United Way will host their next TELTalk on October 26th. That TELTalk will feature Brenda Haynes of Blue Door Consulting. So visit the United Way website or scan the QR code that you see on the screen there to learn more about these events and to register. And finally, a great way to learn about these events and other upcoming events we have as emerging leaders is to check out our social media pages. And we are also very excited to announce here in 2 weeks to celebrate our followers on social media. We will do a drawing for some great prizes, courtesy Fika T-Bar in Wisco, Biscotti. So if that doesn't make you hungry here at lunchtime, I don't know what will. But thanks to those generous donors. And I am now at this time pleased to introduce Sarah Bell of ThedaCare and former chair of Emerging Leaders to welcome our special guest today. Sarah?
Thank you very much, Brenton. As mentioned, my name is Sarah Bell, and I'm honored today to introduce Dr. Imran Andrabi. Since June of 2017, Imran Andrabi, MD, has been President and Chief Executive Officer of ThedaCare. Before joining ThedaCare, Dr. Andrabi was Chief Operating Officer and then President and CEO of Mercy Health in Toledo, Ohio. During his tenure with Mercy Health, Dr. Andrabi served as President of the Mercy Physician Group and President of the Clinically Integrated Network and Chief Network Integration Officer for the region in Toledo. He served as chairman of the board for Mercy Health physicians across the Mercy Health system and vice chair of the board of the Clinically Integrated Network Advanced Health Select in Ohio. Dr. Andrabi has experience with residency programs, and he has served as a faculty member with the Medical College of Ohio and the Ohio University. Dr. Andrabi is a family medicine physician who graduated from King Edward Medical College in Pakistan. He completed his transitional year residency and then his family medical residency at Mercy Hospital in Toledo, Ohio, where he served as chief resident. He is board certified by the American Board of Family Medicine and the American College of Managed Care Medicine and a fellow of American Academy of Family Physicians. It's quite a resume, Dr. Andrabi. Dr. Andrabi has been an active volunteer for United Way Fox Cities Leadership Giving Committee for the past 2 years. And we very much look forward to his leadership as United Way Fox Cities 2022 campaign co-chair. So with that, it is my honor to introduce Dr. Imran Andrabi.
Sarah, thank you very much. You're very kind. Also, Brenton, thank you, and Vaya, thank you as well. I was actually looking at some of the pictures that you were posting of Kim Underhill and Tim Galloway, and I was feeling jealous that I can't be with you all in person, which is where I derive my energy, is by interacting with people. But, you know, we are where we are, and I'm totally honored to be here and be sharing with all of you. So as I was thinking about this conversation, which seems a little one-sided because you're all muted and I'm talking, and then we'll have a Q&A, is tell you a little bit about where I started and why do I feel that leadership is a vocation and a calling rather than a job. And as I was having conversations with Josh and Sandy and some others around, what do we do? What do we talk about? And we expressly said, no PowerPoint presentations, we'll just have a conversation. So keep it simple. So I actually grew up in a military family. My father was in the Air Force, graduated from the Air Force Academy here in Colorado Springs, and originally from Pakistan, and came back. And I grew up listening to all these great stories that he had to share all the time. And at that time, I thought, hey, Air Force is what I want to do. I want to go into the Air Force and fly some planes. And that was put a kibosh on pretty quickly. And he said, absolutely not. That's not what you're going to do. So I started thinking about, okay, so what's next? And in that process, early on, one of my sisters, who was about 11 months younger than me, was diagnosed with cancer. And I was 11 years old. And I remember that journey because at that moment in time, there wasn't a lot of treatment that was available in Pakistan for the condition that she was suffering from. And so we actually had to take her to Switzerland at the time. This was in the mid 70s. Now I'm dating myself, to get some treatments done. And unfortunately, at that time, when bone marrow transplants were just new, and we were doing a check on who would match the bone marrow, none of us in the family actually matched. And so they said, okay, let's take the mom, because her genetics would be the closest to the recipient. And so we did a bone marrow transplant. Long story short, she died a year later. And that started my journey into thinking about what do I need to do differently. Never set out to be a leader, but always set out to make a difference. And through the years, whether it was school or high school or college or medical school, it was always about, what's the impact that you can have on people around us. And that was really, I didn't set out to cure cancer. That was not what I was looking to do because of my, background. But what I really wanted to do is to be able to be in the presence of other people's lives and be able to have an impact in some way, shape, or form. So, whether it's that, or it's the United Way, or it's the work that we do today at ThedaCare, it's all about, how do we show up and what impact are we having in the lives of people. So that started the journey. And, as I entered into practice, that journey continued. My entire practice, the entire time that I was practicing before I moved to Wisconsin, till the very last day, by the way, had always been in an underserved population in Toledo, Ohio, in a urban underserved area for almost 25 years. And one of the things that I talk about is I was taking care of a whole host of people who had backgrounds with Medicaid, or who were people who could not pay for their health care, and feel very, very unempowered as a group of folks. And one of the things that I used to do early on is I used to give, if any of you remember pagers, anybody remember pagers? So I used to give my pager number out to every single patient of mine over the 25 years that I practiced. And when I would tell somebody that, they would look at me and say, Are you crazy? Do you know how many people are going to page you and call you and ask you to do A, B, and C? Imagine us giving our cell phone numbers to our patients, every single patient, right? It's the equivalent of that. So here's a question that you can't answer, but let me ask it anyway. Guess how many pages I got in 25 years? Oh, wow. 4. 4 pages in 25 years. And you would have thought, I'm going to be inundated. People are going to be calling me every single day, every single hour, asking questions, wanting things. And it was 4 times that somebody asked for help. And every time I called them back, the first thing they said to me was, "We are so sorry to bother you." And if that's not a humbling experience, I don't know what a humbling experience is, right? And for one of those pages that I received, I actually went to the family's home to visit them. Because what they needed, I needed to understand them better before I could take care of them. And I don't say this to you to say, well, what a great person I am. That's not the point. The point is, this was all about empowering people so they had the opportunity to do what they could have done, which is paged me every single hour of the day, right? And of the 3,000 odd people that I was taking care of at that time, I got 4 pages in 25 years. So that's why this is a vocation and it's not a job. That's why it's a calling, and it's something that we do because you're trying to impact the lives of other people. What is leadership, and why do we want to be leaders, and where do we come from, and what's our value system, right? And we can talk a lot about what is leadership and what isn't leadership. And all of you are leaders. All of us are leaders in some way, shape, or form in so many different ways. But I think this idea of thinking about leadership as a privilege, it's an honor. It's a sacred trust. That doesn't mean we always make the right decisions all the time by everybody, but how do we show up is really, really important, right? And like I said, what value systems do we come from, and what are the principles that guide us in that process? Because when the going gets tough, you can't just be shooting from the hip, right? And saying, well, let's just do this and let's just do that. But that's where you have to go back and get grounded in the principles under which you have to operate. Because in our business and in many other businesses, all of you, as you do what you do, you are impacting other people's lives, right? And so, I would often say to folks that we impact people's lives forever, positively or negatively. We have to decide how we want to impact their lives. Right? So it is a sacred trust, and every interaction that we have with people is an opportunity to have that impact happen in a hopefully positive way whenever we possibly can. So what is your why? I mean, why do you want to be a leader? Right? It's a question that should be thoughtful, should be a time to pause and reflect and think. Start with the why. what motivates you to be a leader? What is that thing for you? And so what does a leader do? And I was reading somewhere, a leader is not somebody who's trying to create followers. Think about that, right? A leader is actually somebody who's developing other leaders. Because imagine the impact. So, Sarah talked about the fact that I was involved with residency education. So I was a program director and a faculty member for a family medicine program, developed many more residencies and fellowships as a part of my journey. And each one of those physicians that I trained is a leader somewhere having an impact. In some way, shape, or form, in some community, somewhere, right? So the other day, I got a phone call from one of those residents that I trained, and he's the vice chair of the Department of Family Medicine at the Washington University in the Washington state. He's having an impact on the next generation of learners that are training to become family physicians, just like me. Leaders solve problems. Leaders don't create problems. Unlike some things that we see around us from time to time, right? Our jobs is to be problem solvers. Our job is to take away barriers as leaders. Is to enable people to be successful in what they are doing. Not always easy. These things are not easy, but that's our work. And to sort of liberate people to be able to be who they can be and be successful. Our jobs as leaders is also to create a compelling vision of where we want to be. And then enabling other people to be able to see that vision and engage in that vision and be a part of that vision and then feel inspired to go there. The other thing that is really important from a leadership perspective is this idea of where is your locus of control? There are leaders who have their locus of control very far away from them. And so what you will hear them say is, they didn't do this. It's because of that I couldn't. It's because of this that I am not able to. It's because. Right? Or you can bring that locus of control really close to your chest and say, what am I going to do? I mean, COVID is a great example, right? I mean, it's really easy to say, the virus did it, the so-and-so did it, the so-and-so did it. Yes, and what are we going to do? How do we show up? And so that's not easy as well, is how do we sort of personalize that as leaders and sort of bring that control as close to us as possible and say, how am I going to make an impact that is going to be different than what others may be thinking or doing or realizing? Because we can't give up, right? I mean, this COVID situation, not to talk about COVID, is a daily thing that we've been dealing with for 600 plus days, right? And every day you have to stand up and be a leader and figure out what we're going to do, not only for yourself, but for a whole host of people that depend on you. So that's part of having that locus of control. leadership, I often think about this. Leadership is not about the chief operating officer or the CEO or the whatever titles we have. Those are all interesting. It's about what you do. You know, when I was a family physician giving my patient number out, I didn't have a title. Nobody told me to do that. I'll tell you, the other day I had a tremendous opportunity, and people like Sarah and others, they do it all day long. So I had an opportunity to actually go work in our emergency room in China 2 weeks ago. Not as a physician, but as somebody who was cleaning rooms and making beds and changing the sheets and cleaning the toilets so that our patients could be seen. And it was a phenomenal experience. And it wasn't, there were no titles. I was in the same scrubs that everybody else was in. I was actually working under a CNA who was teaching me what to do. And after I left my shift, I said, wow, now I know another thing that I didn't know when I walked in here. Now I can change linens and I can do beds and I can clean rooms and I know what to do. So, but that's a privilege. That's an honor. I mean, every one of those team members were just phenomenal doing what they do every day. And, you know, that was just a little token to that. I think I got a lot more out of that than they would ever do. I often have also thought that why do we keep doing what we do? And you know, sometimes when I am with our leaders, we have this conversation, and it sometimes feel like this is God's work. Healing happens in so many different ways. And it's not just about health, right? It's your well-being. And what is well-being? It's more than your physical, it's your emotional, it's your spiritual, it's your, you know, all the other aspects of who people are. And how do we show up to do that work? I was reading something from Simon Sinek, and I'm sure most people know Simon Sinek, and it said something like this. If you're working hard and you don't like what you do, that creates stress. But if you're working hard and you love what you do, it's called passion. So one of the things, none of my kids ended up going into healthcare, their choice. But one of the things that I used to tell them, even when they were really young, is do what you are going to love doing when you wake up, when you're 30 years old, and feel like, I can't wait to go do what I do. Doesn't matter what it is, because we can all make a difference. So one ended up in human resources. I hope he'll make some difference in people's lives. The other one is doing real estate work. And I ask him often, I say, why are you doing this? And he'd say, because I want to really help people find the right place for them so that they can live a happy life. Oh, okay, that's a great mission statement. Right. So it's what is your why? Why are you doing what you do? I can tell you there were many times in life where, you know, I would have people around me on a Sunday evening just cribbing and crying about Monday. And I've always loved Mondays because I get to do what I love to do. And one of the things that I've always said to myself is when I don't look forward to Mondays, it's time to go do something else. So I think you follow what I'm saying. These are sort of the principles, if you may, of honor and privilege, of a sacred trust, of doing God's work, of having impact, of being of service to people. It's much bigger than me as an individual. And so when you practice that, or you practice that as best as you can each and every day, and you bring that into your life, you hope that you make a difference one day at a time. And sometimes as leaders, we are not looking for that immediate difference where somebody will send you an email and say, you made a difference. Sometimes you do what you do and you walk away and you never find out until 10 years later what difference you made. Which is okay. Which is completely okay. So the other few things that have helped on the way is never getting too comfortable and staying uncomfortable or seeking the uncomfortable at times. Because when you get too comfortable, you sort of, I think, dull down a little bit in terms of how you want to approach your work. I've always loved change, so that's different about, there are some people who love change and some people who hate change, right? I'm one of those who loves change. Not change for the sake of changing, but change for the sake of better. Is there a better way? Is there something we could think about differently? And then there are some people who live in the world of certainty, and there are some people who love the world of ambiguity. And I love the world of ambiguity. So it's okay if it's ambiguous. We'll figure it out. I don't need to know exactly what it's going to be. If I have an understanding of where we are looking to go, we'll figure out the pathway. Because there are many, many, many times that the pathways are not absolutely clear. But if the vision is clear and the principles are clear and the values are clear and you know why you do what you do, you will figure it out. So I hope, I don't know how much more time we have, but I hope that this sort of gives a understanding of why it's a vocation and why it's a calling and why it's not a job. And the best thing is that you find your passion and you find the place that in the universe, if you may, that gives you pleasure. And oh, by the way, you get paid to do it as well. Whether it's business or it's my personal life, money has never been the driver. Because when we do what is right and we do it for the right reasons, the money follows. We do that. I've done it many, many, many times in the different businesses that I have had to run. And I've never run out of money. there has never been a time where there wasn't enough money to do what we needed to do, as long as we figured out what we had to do. And if you pick up any book that's been written by any great company or about any great company, I think one of the things that you will find is no great company was ever started because somebody wanted to make money. Every great company was started by somebody because they wanted to make a difference in the lives of people, and the money followed. So there's nothing wrong with money, and there's nothing wrong with being a good business person, and there's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. But is that the primary motivator, or is it a secondary benefit that comes from doing what we do? I'll leave you with one last thought, and that is this thought of, as a leader, are you an abundant leader or are you a scarcity leader? Do you come from the universe has a lot of abundance and things will get figured out, or do you come from here's a barrier, here's a barrier, here's a barrier, here's a barrier, here's a scarcity, we can't do this, we can't do this, we can't do it. It's all up here. If you can think it, it's possible. Because we are quite creative as people, and we figure out when we want to figure it out. So, as you know, I love talking, and I can go on and on and on, but it is, even though I don't see all of you, it's my distinct privilege. Thank you for inviting me and wanting me to be here, and thanks for listening. I hope some of it made sense for some of you, and happy to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Andrabi. I don't know about the rest of you, but I was feverishly writing down a lot of notes. So I learned so much. So thank you for taking time to share that with us today. We do have a couple questions from some of the attendees. The first question is, how do you bring along those who might not be that open to change or ambiguity?
Yeah, that's easy. No, I'm just kidding. It's a process. So first of all, I think it's important to understand that we are not going to change everyone, and we are not going to convince everybody all the time about everything we're trying to do. However, having said that, we also have to make sure that we have given everybody all the information, the why, the what we are trying to do and where we are trying to go and what the vision is, and really help them make the right choices for them. Because here's another thing, when I talked about the locus of control, every day, each and every one of us makes a choice to do or not do something. We always have a choice. We always have a choice, right? Sometimes it requires what we call multiple coats of paint. So it's not a one and done, you have a conversation and everybody just says, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense, let's just go do it, right? That's very rare. And so sort of building that discussion, having that conversation, having the right inputs, and also setting up the right parameters under which we are going to make those decisions. And then everybody has a choice to say, yep, makes sense, let's go, or no, not for me. And as particularly when you do large scale change and transformative change, it is important as leaders to understand that not everybody is going to like it, and not everybody may come along for the ride as well.
Great, thank you. The next question is, what steps would you recommend a young professional in the Fox Valley use to build their personal and professional sphere of influence?
Wow, that's a great question. I wasn't ready for that one. Boy, I'll tell you what. So I didn't talk about my transition to the Fox Valley, but I'll tell you, this is an amazing place. After having lived in Ohio for 26 years and literally grown up there, I couldn't have asked for a better place to come to. I really, really mean that. And I say that in the context of the question because the leadership engagement in this community is unbelievable. People really, really care. So I can't even imagine that a young professional who would want to increase their sphere of influence could not reach out to some leaders at different levels within the community, and they'd be willing to embrace you and say, come on in. Let's have a conversation. Let's figure that out, right? That's what I find. And, I also sort of see that through the lens of some youngsters that I am interacting with. I've had physicians, for example, from competing health systems reach out to me and ask, would I mentor them? And the answer is yes. Why not? So whoever you are, young professional wanting to increase your sphere of influence, I think you just have to ask. I think you'll find a lot of people who are willing to help.
I think you're right. That's great advice. The next question we have is, have you made any mistakes in your professional career that you think we could learn from or that you'd like to share?
Oh boy, yes. Any leader who tells you they haven't made any mistakes, they're lying to you. I have a lot of scars on my back from mistakes I've made. I think what I would say is the biggest mistake we can make is to not learn from our mistakes. Because if we make the same mistakes over and over again, it's not a mistake, then it becomes a blunder. So they're too numerous to count, I would just say. We're all fallible, I think every time where I have made a mistake, I have tried to learn from it and also actively tried not to make the same mistake again. The other thing is surrounding yourself with people who are willing to speak up and tell you when you are, I don't know what the right politically correct word would be in this situation, but just stop, And I have people around me who will come to me and say, you're wrong. That's not the right thing to do. Or have you considered? Or whatever the case may be. The third thing is shared decision-making. So there's sometimes that I have to make the decision. And there are times where, I'll take the decision to several people and say, this is what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? And does that make sense? So I think the more important thing is learn and protect yourself from making mistakes on the front end of it, if at all possible.
Great, thank you. The next question is, when you find that times are challenging, where do you draw motivation as the leader to continue to encourage the team and yourself? And also there was a shout out that said, thank you for all you're doing for the medical community.
Yeah, thank you. I'll tell you, so I have a couple of things. One, I used to be an introvert and I have become an extrovert, and I still need my introvert time to reflect and think. So one of the things that I do intentionally is to set up time in my calendar to think and reflect. I read a lot every day. I will wake up at least an hour and a half before I have to wake up and just read. But the most inspiration actually comes from interacting with people who actually do the real work. Not that our work is not real, but the real work, right? So that example of spending time in the ED in Shano, that's real, very inspiring. Every week, almost every week, I actually get together with our frontline folks around something called Coffee Connections. We did that through COVID, so it's virtual coffee. Some people have actually sent me coffee, so I have coffee when I'm having a conversation with them. But that's a chance for me to have a conversation with our frontline team members without anybody else being in the middle. And so I just hear from them and understand where they are and what's happening. I go on rounds. I just show up, sometimes unannounced. And 2 weeks ago, I was in our hospital in Wapaka and rounded with all the nurses and physicians and caregivers and just learned what was going on. I've done that all my life. So that's another way where you learn a lot and you get inspired by the great work that people do every day, and that fills you up. And then it says, this is why I do what I do. Now let's go do some more.
Thank you. Another question came in, and they asked, what advice or suggestions would you give to leaders who are helping other promising upcoming leaders grow and develop professionally?
Yeah, I think one of the things that, and not one thing, but one of the things that is really important is, and I do this as I mentor people today, is I keep asking them, why do you do what you do? Why do you want to be a leader? I mean, this same conversation we just had a little while ago, right? And then what are the principles what are the values that really propel you to do what you do? And the most important part of leadership is to actually get to know yourself. And the more people get to know themselves, the more people realize why they do what they do. So as I professionally, as I've grown and had the opportunity to go through a lot of leadership development in a very sort of intentional way, the biggest focus in leadership development has always been, do you actually know yourself? Do you actually know who you are? Do you understand how you look, how you feel, how you come across, so the more we can become self-aware as leaders, the more we can understand what our strengths are and what our weaknesses are, because we all have strengths and weaknesses. And the more we realize how to surround ourselves with people who are better than us and are a strength for our weaknesses, the more successful we are going to be.
Thank you. And then someone else would like to know, what excites you the most about the future of the Fox Cities?
So I think that's another interesting question. I just feel that, first of all, I believe we have some phenomenal people in our community. I mean, everywhere I go, it's just been a breath of fresh air from my perspective, in terms of how people are interested in actually improving things, right? So that's a real positive. I think we have something very unique and have great opportunities to further develop what we want this place to be in terms of a thriving community, in terms of, you know, what has been already developed vis-a-vis businesses in our community. It's for a community of this size, what we have here is unparalleled, at least from my perspective. And then I already talked about how leaders in the community are so engaged in helping the community. That's not usual. So, you know, I think the more we build on some of those things, the more we understand, you know, as we change over a period of time, the community is changing. I mean, our demographics are changing, the people that are coming into the community are changing, and as we become more understanding and more inclusive, we will learn from each other and continue to build on that. So I believe the future is very exciting. I believe that, you know, people like yourselves who are emerging leaders are going to really make a difference. Even though I haven't met all of you, but I can feel that. You know, you'll have a lot of people that are going to come alongside you and help make that change be possible. I truly believe that.
Right. And we had one more question come in. And what do you recommend to your leadership team to help them increase their self-awareness?
Yeah, so we actually do a fair amount of one, reflection, believe it or not. We also have very transparent conversations with one another. I will actually build in time during my time with leaders that work very closely with me to have reflective time, to stop and pause and think and share. We also then have some tools and instruments that we use to be able to give people feedback around who they are, how are they changing, and how to best utilize that going forward as well. So it's a dynamic process. And we do that for, you know, every leader, for example, that joins ThedaCare now actually goes through an instrument where we can understand where they are and then be able to understand where they are after a certain amount of time, and then be able to reflect back and say, what have you learned? What has changed? How does that impact who you are as a leader and what you're going to do? So it's a process, but it's happening, and you have to be intentional around it, because otherwise it's easy to forget about sometimes the pause and reflect moments that we need to do what we need to do.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you again. That was our last question, but someone does have a recommendation. They would like you to create a Dr. Andrabi recommended books list, which I think would be fun. I see Aaron Rodgers just made one, so you should do one too. But
we can do that.
Much again for your time today. I learned so much as a leader that I will take back to my team. So really appreciate your time.
Thank you all very much. Again, it was great to be here. I wish we can someday get together in person. That would be thrilling, and happy to help in any way I can as we go forward. So thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
And Dr. Andrabi, on behalf of all of our emerging leaders and all of our attendees, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for spending and sharing some of your valuable time with us today. And to our attendees, thank you for joining us. This will conclude our TELTalk. Don't forget to follow us on social media, and we would invite you to join us for any of our upcoming events. Thank you again, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much.